Hello everybody, I hope you are doing well. I do apologize for my lack of videos this week, but there's been a lot of life stuff happening, so I just haven't been able to shoot and edit the videos on schedule. Starting from next week, I will be back on my regular schedule, but I didn't want to leave you guys with nothing this week, so I thought I would do something fun and react to a few writer memes. So let's kick it off with this one right here. My writing teacher praised me. She said I could be the next J.D. Salinger, but only if I stay out of the public eye for 50 years. That is kind of mean. Oh my gosh. Now, for those who don't know, J.D. Salinger was the author of a very well-known book called Catcher in the Rye. The book was brilliant, but J.D. Salinger was a very well-known recluse. It was notoriously difficult for anyone to be granted an interview with him or to get any kind of time with him at all. So, yeah, I don't know about this one. You know, to be compared to J.D. Salinger as a writer is a compliment by anyone's standards. But yeah, to stay out of the public eye for 50 years kind of takes the shine off of that one a little bit. I do have a video coming up which addresses the topic of how to stay motivated when someone has told you that your writing is not good. So watch out for that one in the next couple of weeks. Writing at a reasonable time? No. Writing in the middle of the night? Yeah. Yes, this is one that a lot of writers can relate to as well. It can be difficult to produce work in the middle of the day when the rest of the world is awake and everyone thinks that the hour is, civilized. And, but in the middle of the night, you're on it and your mind is flowing and the words are flowing and the ideas are flowing. During the day, there's just too much life happening. You got the kids around you and you've got to cook the dinner, you got to do the laundry, you got to take care of all of the stuff that's, typically done during the day. And there's just too much going on for your mind to be able to really focus on the imaginary characters and events that are in your head. So, at night, things are quieter, everyone's asleep, there are just fewer distractions, and it can be easier to get those creative juices flowing. So, I think that's why this happens. How I feel when I write a plot twist. My readers think the story is going this way, but really it is going that way and they have no idea what is coming. That's exactly what it feels like. It's kind of like sorcery and you're creating this deliberate kind of deception and no one sees it coming and it's like, gotcha. Being a good writer is 3% talent, 97% not being distracted by the internet. Yeah, this is true. And we tell ourselves that when we're messing around on the internet, we are doing research. And when we say we're doing research, I would say, some of the time we are actually doing research, but then we stumble upon something else that's completely unrelated but equally interesting and we start looking into that. Or, we'll get pinged on our Facebook and we'll, go and see what's going on there. Or, yeah, the internet is kind of a rabbit hole for writers. It's very, very, very easy to get lost there. And you don't notice the time passing. You think you've taken 5 minutes to just quickly look at something and you look at your watch and it's like, holy cow, an hour has gone by. Where has the time gone? When I say I'm writing a novel, what my friends think I do, what the media thinks I do, what my mom thinks I do, I don't really think my mom thinks that. What I think I do and what I really do, oh, yes, I can relate to this one so well. You sit down and you're determined to get that next chapter out and you are all mentally prepared to just start typing and for the words to be flowing. But what actually happens is you type a sentence and then it's just like, oh my gosh, everything's just dried up. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? What am I going to do? Yeah, this happens. Not every time, but there are days when this happens. Writers, when they know a sentence doesn't belong in a story, but they won't delete it. After all, why not? Why shouldn't I keep it? See, the thing is, from time to time, as writers, we come up with these sentences or these phrases that we think are absolutely brilliant, and we don't want to lose them. And during our editing, we may discover that, that sentence doesn't really go here, but it's such a brilliant sentence and it really, really hurts to get rid of it. So when that happens, get rid of it from a story where it doesn't belong, but, hold on to it because you may use that in something else. So definitely write it down, make a note of it in a place where you will later find it. The past, the present, and the future walk into a bar. It was tense. That is funny, but I don't think I need to explain. Me, I want to work on one story at a time. Also me, start writing another one. You write a story, you get an idea for another story, but part of you knows that you should finish story number 1 before you start on story number 2. but there's another part of you that doesn't want to lose the idea of story number 2. So what do? And that is how a lot of writers actually end up writing multiple stories in parallel. And, you know, sometimes it can work, but at some point you're going to have to give your focus to one of the stories over and above all of the other ones. I don't think there's anything wrong with it particularly. You know, you just have to watch how you manage your creativity and your time. Oh yes, every fiction writer in the history of fiction writers since the internet was invented. When someone checks your internet history, it was for a book I was writing, a book, you gotta believe me. I have researched some really, really weird things. You know, like how do you kill somebody and make it look like an accident? What poisons produce which symptoms in human beings? You know, what happens if you are wanted by the police and you need to travel from one place to the other? Will you be stopped at the airport? And it can seem very suspect, and, you know, it could be concerning to someone who doesn't know or believe that you're actually writing a story. Everyone can relate to this. Writers, unsung gods, for they are the creators of worlds. Now, I would not, by any stretch of the imagination, refer to myself as any kind of a god or goddess or whatever. Creator of worlds, yeah, absolutely. You know, the characters that we create and the scenarios we create, we know that they are fictional. You know, we don't have any kind of dissonance that makes us actually believe they're real, but in a way they are very, very real to us. Our characters do become like real people. We have to get to know them just like we do with real people. But yeah, they are creations nonetheless. You know, just as a painting or a sculpture is. Oh yes, always awful first drafts are. Just start. One of my earliest videos was about first drafts and how you should always embrace them. I truly believe that. You know, first drafts are not meant to be polished works of art. They are meant to just be first drafts that get your ideas down on paper. I will link to the video in the description. Yeah, don't be put off by a bad first draft. First drafts are supposed to be bad. They're not supposed to be brilliant. I wish I could pull off the Yoda voice though. I've never been able to manage that. I always try and I always end up sounding like an idiot. When she reads your manuscript and thinks it's a comedy, but you've been writing a love story. Yeah, this has not actually happened to me. I do try to make my genre clear in my writing. So I've never had someone mistake one genre for another in anything that I've written, but I have definitely mistaken or been confused about genres and things that I have consumed as an audience. One of my favorite examples is the movie Fargo. I thought it was hilarious. It's kind of brutal and gruesome and there's like dead bodies and stuff, but I just thought it was funny, man. I still don't know if Fargo was actually intended to be a comedy or not, but to me, one of the funniest movies I've ever seen. My angsty writer self trying to find where in my work I can put sadness. And my reader self seeing what's happening to beloved characters. When you have to kill off a character or create some kind of tragedy for them to go through, yeah, there was a bit of guilt involved. I feel bad. I have cried writing the death of a character. You know, and I put the scene in there because it enhances the story or it's essential to the story, but you know, you can't help feeling bad. And it's like, when you read that scene, it's like, oh, why did this character have to die? Why did they have to go through this? Definitely a bit of a conflict going on there. All you need is motivation. False. You need fear and an approaching deadline. I have a feeling this doesn't only apply to writing. I think this applies to many pursuits. But you know, you get an assignment or a project or, you know, something that you have to do by a certain date and you think, oh, I got loads of time, no worries. I can, you know, I'll get to this later. And then 2 days before the deadline, you're like, ah, better get writing. And that's when you get the job done. Some people like living on the edge. What can I say? Tell me you did not look at this meme and sing it. I did, but only in my head because my singing is awful. My older son, who is autistic, does not allow me to sing. I start to sing and he just goes, stop! So I am not going to attempt to sing this one. It is good though. When you come back to finish your story after too long a break, I have no memory of this place. Yeah, you have to go back and you have to read your entire draft up to the point where you left off. I wouldn't recommend it. You know, if you've started a story, finish your draft. If you're in a hurry, just finish the draft. As we saw a couple of memes ago, it doesn't matter if the draft is bad, just get the story down, because editing a completed draft is a whole lot easier than picking up a half-finished draft 6 months after you left off. The slow writer's process: daydreaming in the shower, staring off into space, lying awake imagining scenes, researching minuscule facts, finding the perfect word, rereading what I wrote, blogging, tweeting, Facebooking, and writing actual sentences. That is largely true, but in defense of writers, writing involves a lot more than the last point there, which is writing actual sentences. Sometimes we have to do that research. We have to research those tiny little details. Sometimes we have to spend time thinking of the perfect word because we know that the story or the piece of writing just wouldn't be as impactful without it. Daydreaming in the shower, yeah, that's something I do, but I daydream about what I'm writing, so it is still productive time. You know, and it's the same thing with a lot of these other things, staring off into space, lying awake, imagining scenes. We're not actually sitting writing complete sentences, but it is still productive times. And yes, writers do seem to be prone to a certain amount of procrastination, but a lot of that is productive time. So, you know, if that's you, don't feel bad. Writer problems. Me. Terrible things keep happening to my characters. I don't understand why. Brain. Make it worse. Me. But why? Brain. You gotta. Hashtag writer problems. Hashtag my poor damaged babies. Hashtag why does this keep happening? Hashtag I'm sorry I had to. Like I said earlier, the characters are real to us and we do feel bad about the bad things that keep happening to them, but that's what makes the story good. After 4 hours of writing an essay, yeah, I think this has happened to every single writer at least once. You have your blank page and you start your first sentence, and after the first word or two, you just kind of get stuck. At least back in Shakespearean times, they could make their lettering all ornate and, you know, they could still tell themselves they were being productive. We really don't have that excuse. Whew! Yes, this is a freelance writer's dream. Not. Company wants to increase rankings, so they hire an intern writer, but that's none of my business. This is a dig at the content mills that produce pages and pages of content that is really, really cheap. This content may hit all of the keywords and they may be great in terms of the Google rankings, but the quality of the writing is absolute crap. I do not make any pretense of being able to deliver, you know, like 10 pages a day or whatever. I'd rather take the time to produce good quality that still ranks on search engines, but is actually readable and informative or entertaining at the same time. Writer's block is real, and when it strikes, you sometimes find yourself, you know, picking up random objects on your desk and doing this. I've never tried that actually, but man, I want to. Next time I have writer's block, that's what I'm doing. You know you're a writer when you narrate the day's events in your head, describing yourself in third person. I have done this, and some of the experiences that I go through do make it into my books in a fictionalized kind of way. Any of my friends and family members should consider themselves forewarned that bits of their lives may end up in my stories. Not in any way that's identifiable. There's a very good movie called Stranger Than Fiction where a guy is going about his daily life and he hears this voice in his head that's narrating everything that's happening to him. I highly recommend it. Fantastic movie. So check it out. This is how writers should respond to bad reviews. You are without a doubt the worst writer I've ever heard of. But you have heard of me. That's like, there's no such thing as bad publicity. Is that true? I think people have different opinions on that. Update your lesson plans. We have a new perfect example for Oxford commas. The highlights of his waning administration include encounters with Rudy Giuliani, a healthcare disaster, and a collector. That is so good. So for those who don't know, the Oxford comma is a comma before the word and. So in this case, an Oxford comma would appear after the words healthcare disaster. And that makes the meaning of the sentence very, very clear. So the highlights of the waning administration including number 1, encounters with Rudy Giuliani, number 2, a healthcare disaster, and number 3, a collector. But without that Oxford comma, it makes it look like Rudy Giuliani himself is a healthcare disaster and a collector. I am going to refrain from expressing an opinion about either version of that sentence. Hi, I'm a writer and my skills include creating people from thin air, creating places from thin air, putting these people and places together and weaving them into the form of interesting stories, and last but not least, freezing up and stumbling over my words for a full 5 minutes when asked even the simplest question about the above-mentioned topics. So yes, I write a book, but then when someone asks me, hey, what is your book about? I'm like, considering we're writers, we can experience a very weird loss of words. What if writers of dystopian novels are just submitting their world domination plans for peer review? Ooh, wow. Does anyone else have the feeling that since this whole pandemic began, life has just been so weird? And it's like, you know, would anyone actually be able to write this? It's so strange. It's like stranger than fiction. It sort of goes beyond what would be in most people's imaginations. But then, true, people write some pretty weird things. And, you know, some events and stories have actually turned out to happen. And, you know, this is where we see all these memes and stories about how, oh my gosh, the writers of The Simpsons totally predicted this, whatever this thing is that's going on. So yeah, maybe there's something to this. I don't know. Oh, this is one of my favorites. I've seen this a few times. My new book is out, published by IKEA. And, you know, the whole joke is that when you get something from IKEA, you have to put it together yourself. So yeah, a book in the form of Scrabble tiles, brilliant. The cool thing about that is that everyone would come up with a different story. Hey girl, don't forget to back up your files while you work. Yeah, please, girls, guys, everyone in between, please don't forget to back up your files while you work. Please. If you take anything from this video, take that. Do not forget to back up your files while you work. We will not discuss how I know this. 5 words that will help your technical writing career. Thingamabob, dealy, what's it, plug thingy, electrocution. I am not a technical writer myself. It's a very specific, very precise kind of writing that I'm not very good at. But if I was a technical writer, I would totally be using these words. Yeah. Writer's block, when your imaginary friends won't talk to you, that is the most perfect description of writer's block that I've ever seen. I am not always inspired, but when I am nowhere near my computer. Yeah, that happens. You know, inspiration hits you. You think of this brilliant idea for a blog post or, you know, a plot in your story, and you are not in any place where you can conveniently stop and take note of that idea. And then when you think of it later, it's like, what was that idea that I had earlier on? Keep a notebook wherever you can, write things down, use the voice recorder function on your phone so you can at least leave yourself a voice memo. You know, just do anything you can to keep those ideas because, you know, the worst ideas are the ones that never make it onto paper. And that is the end of the writer memes. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please leave me a note or leave me a thumbs up if you would like to see more of this kind of content. From next week, we will be back to the 2-minute writing tips. I hope you guys have a fantastic week and I'll see you then. Bye.